Yeah.
Yeah.
Of the vampire.
It's an agenda item.
No, see the link.
It's an agenda item.
We have exhibits and props. This is great.
Did you do your swearing in for this, right against term? Office tomorrow or do your oath and then at the. Okay. I want to make sure that we're and that's that times. Are you? Stop.
It's all about learning.
Villages. Have fun with that.
To do with the team.
Who are my brothers?
They do. They think we're married. I was watching the villages and just amazing.
Serve.
Acres and there's like 65 golf courses or something to see like that.
There are.
A different method, right?
45 and 30.
I guess that's what it is.
And music every night.
Every four times and. Yeah.
Did you do? That was your thing. That was your thing. Is that your thing?
Yeah. Full family.
It absolutely is. And then you get to be able to be mobile and be able to go and have that time with them. Are they, where are you at? Like younger, middle, older?
They're both older and then I.
This. Yes, that's big thing here now.
Fastest growing.
It's very contentious. Some communities are very contentious with the. Yeah, and I think a lot of it's a very big deal in stuff.
Yeah.
It was one of the most, and it was a lot of the. So there are communities that it's becoming one of the more contentious sides that their community here. Depending.
Are they?
Also a hunter. And noise now.
What are they?
Basketball, I don't know, maybe that's really soccer, I mean, soccer, you know, depending on how many people are on the cheering, so anyway. There's a lot and it's for that. And I didn't figure you were to think off, so I was trying to think outside of that.
Yeah.
And then I was reading because it's always.
I mean.
Very good, how are you? Because it's air conditioning, it was study, and you can get a DUI. That's a form of transportation. All right, I'll let you get to you.
There will be papers on it.
Good.
Accident.
Okay, well, you have the office by Friday? If you saw. Kind of set out radio.
Yeah, so.
Is it see? August? Why is it so long? Why August?
Well, they're willing.
Okay, all right. See you later.
Just gonna be going.
They brought up some guy.
Oh, this is. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, don't forget to make a point about color of driveway and no guarantees and that happens, no matter what happens. Is he in here yet? Okay, so what's the other hot button? I don't see it on here. No. Oh, yeah, mailbox. Yeah, yeah. Oh, she's so sweet. Are you going to the big dinner tomorrow night? I'm not either. I have to work at a church dinner. Oh, he'll be there. I think Dean will be there. Yeah, I have, through St. Mary's, we have community banquet. And it's once a month, and every 2 months, we're responsible, so I have to cook tomorrow night. It's not just me, we have a team at our parish, but tomorrow night's our cooking night, and so we have to get there by 4:15. That people eat at 6. But we don't have to stay to clean up. There's a different team that does, they combine it like that. So one person doesn't have to do everything, which is nice. Yeah.
All right.
Matt,
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. We have fun tonight.
Oh, jeez. That's your definition of fun.
We'll try to keep it moving along. There's just the 2 contentious issues. I have to ask you, what? Is it 36?
It was all, if it was all the team.
Yeah. Fix me something.
Because we, what we did is we sent out a letter for people to opt in, and we had 6 opt-ins.
So it's too late for the other.
Opt-ins under the company's is 50%.
Yeah, gotcha. Okay,
So it'd be,
Yeah.
yeah, probably more like 120 instead of 6.
yeah. It was.
That's what I'm thinking, if we change it. to
Yeah.
3, that letter that we sent,
Yeah.
probably just removed it, we have to.
Second? No, I think that's, what is his name, Jake? Something like that. Yeah, I gotta grab Bob. Time is it? 5:29. Yeah, make a point of, explaining that cost. Oh, you made it. Good job. I thought I was late tonight. You got a whole minute.
Have my agenda up by?
Got 30 seconds in. Do we have somebody taking minutes tonight?
Deb will be remote.
Oh, she won't. Okay. All right. Yeah, I got the button. You got the button? It's just that top button right there. Yeah, the top one. Yeah, if you hit the top one, the light should go on.
A biggie.
Oh,
Don't say that.
everything's backwards.
We're gonna have a lot of public comments.
Okay, microphones are on, just so you know, all of them are on. It's 5:30, and we'll call this meeting of the Public Works and Highway Committee to order. Attendance shows all committee members are present. I'll entertain approval of the minutes from March 6th, as well as the special meeting. We could do them together if there's no changes on March 18th.
Move approval of the minutes for 3/26/2024 and the special meeting on 3/18/2024.
I'll second that motion.
Were there any comments or changes on the minutes?
I wasn't at that special meeting, so I can't.
Okay.
vote on that.
Oh. Then I guess we should separate.
You can still approve the minutes.
Yeah,
Even though I wasn't.
yeah, I've done it. Okay, all in favor? Aye.
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 It's unanimous. Moving on to public comment. Anybody who would like to come forward to the microphone, state your name and address, please, and please limit your comments to 3 minutes. If you're here for something on the agenda, Mrs. Reese, I think you are, we'll wait until your part comes up for that and for the driveway.
Melanie Smythe, N140W17938 Cedar Lane. My only comment is about the minutes. And I didn't look up the first minute meeting, which I think was the 6th, of March, but it doesn't have anything about public comments in there. And I'm pretty certain that most people are making public comments on the one from the second meeting minutes. I think that was whatever date that was. It just says 2 people spoke. Well, why are we doing these sheets if you're not recording what we're saying or who spoke? So it's a question. Shouldn't the comments be incorporated? And I do recall that at some point, one of those meetings, someone was off-site doing it, and maybe, I don't know who that person was, maybe it wasn't this meeting. But I think that the comments should be incorporated into the minutes.
We'll look into that. It might be me, but yeah, I had a hard time hearing you know, up here sometimes it's like it's really, speak up, whoever comes up to the microphone, please.
Want me to repeat it?
No, I.
Okay.
I have a screen for it. Who else would like to come up, please, for?
As
I got to put the microphone up higher. I'm sorry, taller. Scott Heffley, W159N1514 Old Farm Road, Germantown. Just a couple things, hopefully that helps. You know, offering free consulting. What does that mean? Utility Advisory Committee. I'm a commissioner on that, and we have a lot of utility stuff going on. So, and I know Mr. Warren is here. He runs the commission. You know, we got retired We Energies guy on there. I'm the financial guy. We have a civil engineer on there. So I know there's a lot going on, a lot of development, a lot of building. There's a lot of utility stuff. So if this commission so sees fit to it, I'm ready for it to take on. We've taken on other things, and I know we haven't met in a bit. We're kind of waiting for things going through, but with all the things we have going on, it's not going to cost you to ask us what we think. You don't have to take the advice, but advice is freely given, and we'd like a crack at it. So I'm asking as a commissioner, not as Trustee Warren. As far as the ongoing projects, and this just came up the other night, we had an engineering question, or there was an engineering thing that went on with the projects we're doing. And I know we have a couple new gentlemen. We have Kevin and Matt here. And I'm thinking maybe it'd be helpful if we heard from them when there was like an engineering question. They're new to the village, and I think that people, if they're watching or whatever they're doing, they would maybe be able to recognize them or align with them or feel comfortable with, whatever the word is. I just think that they could talk a little more. I don't know if they're okay with that. So that's the comment I have. And then the last idea that I had, I don't know, you know, like Matt came from a different community, and I think Kevin did too, and these gentlemen have many years of experience. So, you know, perhaps ask, you know, and I'm sure they do, what happened in your community when we tried to do projects like this? Or do you know somebody that went through something like we're going through, and how did they handle it? Maybe we could tap into the resources of the connections these gentlemen have, or in general that we have to help us. So that way we don't have to say we got to figure this all out ourselves, just maybe tap in the other communities around us who may be facing the same thing. That's all I have. Thank you.
Anybody else? We also go on to new business day, approval of 50% resident participation in Country Bell Manor driveway adjustments. And you want to start that one, Nat, and then we'll call up the homeowner.
Sure. So this is an issue that goes back quite a ways. So I'm going to give a brief timeline on what's transpired. Basically, when the development was created, There was a base course of asphalt installed in about the 2008, 2009 era. And then subsequent, no additional top course or wear course of asphalt was installed until more recent development. So in that time, from 2008 until essentially mid last year, there were residents that made adjustments to that base course of asphalt with their driveways. Some of those were permitted, some were not. But over the course of time, that did happen. Then, as time went on, from 2008 until probably 2020, 2021, the road started showing up in our road program for deteriorated condition. And eventually in 2023, there was funding to do a pulverize and reconstruct to address the poor conditions in the road. And that was performed in roughly July of 2023. The result of the pulverize and reconstruct, which takes the rubbleized existing layer of asphalt and adds on top additional layers of asphalt, raised the profile of the road, which resulted in connections to the driveways that the residents did not like. So that came to the Public Works Committee late last year, I want to say September, October, as a discussion item to talk about how do we resolve this. And at that time, it wasn't an action item, but it was a discussion that was had between the village administrator and the committee. And it was determined that a 50-50 cost share for the village to come back and make new connections to the driveway was a way to resolve that. So from that point forward, we as village staff proceeded with that plan. And that included, planning, budgeting, and then eventually early this year, we sent out letters to residents in that subdivision and asked them to opt into a 50-50 cost share program and provided a deadline of March 31st to do so. And as of March 31st, we had 6 of 13 residents in that subdivision opt into this 50-50 cost share program. Ultimately, we'd like to resolve the issue, and that's why it's an action item for tonight's agenda to figure out what level of participation will be approved, because this is funding that's coming out of the 2024 road program. So ultimately, whatever we decided affects the bottom line on dollars that are available for the road program.
Could you also explain, I know we've all been to this subdivision, I'm sure that we've gone more than once. Did you do something incorrectly? Did no one do something incorrectly? How did it turn out that it's everybody's complaining?
Yeah, the history going back to, the 2008, 2009 era is a little difficult to piece together just because there's been numerous series of village engineers and public works directors, and staff has completely turned over in that time. But what we believe happened is that letter of credit lapsed and the contractor was able to just walk away. So there was some fault at the time on the village, and then obviously continued to be some fault for the village for allowing, this condition to exist for so many years.
And would the developer at that time, why would a developer walk away? Would it have been a financial issue back? That was when we had the recession? Or do we not know that?
Now, I don't know if we know all of the details there.
Just wouldn't think somebody'd walk away from something they knew they were responsible for, that's all.
It's just they didn't have any continuing financial responsibility.
Okay.
So we didn't have any mechanism to bring them back after that point.
Okay, well, committee, what's on the board is 50% approval, 60% approval, 100% approval. 13, you said people opted in for the 50%.
No, there were 13 residents affected,
Oh, okay.
13 properties, and 6 of the 13 opted into the
Opted in.
50-50 cost share.
Okay. And that's at a cost of what to us?
Well, it depends how the share is ultimately.
If it's 50-50 like you have it now, what would that cost approximately be?
It would be approximately $3,000 per driveway.
Okay. Go ahead.
village share.
I'd like to ask some clarifying questions. So if I can remember, the contractor that went out there, most of those driveways were concrete leading out to the road, and the contractor ground down the concrete and replaced approximately 50% of the apron with asphalt to be flushed to the road, is what happened, correct?
Correct.
And then are we replacing it with concrete, or what are we doing?
Yeah, we would be replacing it with concrete. So we'd be removing and replacing with concrete.
Okay. And what type, if any, notice was given to the residents when the contractor went out to do the work? Do we know that?
We don't know that. I mean, all I can say is what I would do now, but unfortunately I don't have record of the type of communication that.
And what would you do now? Since you hinted at it,
Well, I mean, obviously we want to avoid things like this in the future, and this isn't a condition that anybody wants. So once we have a formally approved contract, we plan, like for this year's road program, to send a letter out communicating, first of all, your road is affected, explain how access to your property is going to work, and explain how restoration would take place. And that would include a topic of restoring whatever driveway condition there was, if it was asphalt or if it was concrete, replacing it with asphalt. Because that is the standard, to replace with asphalt in the right of way.
and doing quick math, six people times 3,000 is $18,000 for 50%.
Yep.
Thank you.
Bob?
You want the resident to speak first, or?
Yeah.
I just have one more thing to add. And that's, because asphalt is traditionally how we replace approaches in the right of way, because we're installing concrete now, doesn't necessarily mean that it isn't at risk from future village projects,
Mhm.
which could replace the concrete with asphalt.
Thank you.
So my name is Adam Dempsey. I live in Country Bell Manor. My address is N113W21909 North Manor Court. Matt did a great job of recapping the background. I've only lived in this neighborhood for 5 years, so I don't go all the way back as well. I'm probably over prepared here, but because there's photos and stuff, but I do believe that everyone has been through the neighborhood. The first slide, basically, they're not very great photos because I never thought to take pictures of my road before the village did road construction on it. So they're not of the road in specifically, but I just wanted to show that the binder course was basically 2 grade, meaning it's a rural community, there's no curb and gutter. Everyone's yard came directly to the height of the old binder course that Matt talked about. All of our driveways were brought to that. And because I think the residents were under the impression that the road was done. We don't know a lot about paving, and for over a decade, no one ever came in there. So we thought it would be finished. We've been discussing this ever since the day the project kicked off in July. We tried to stop it because when I saw that you weren't hauling anything out, I knew what was going to happen, that this wasn't going to go very well. I didn't want the neighborhood brought up 6 inches. So we weren't able to stop it. The background on whether the developer, the village, was supposed to finish the road, I don't know that either, but somebody drops the ball there. If you go to the second page, there's Matt did a great job of recapping it, but, the problem is that you added 6 inches of asphalt. So there's an old binder course. We pulverized it. We added another binder course, which is 3 inches thick, and then a surface finish. So I have the thickest road in the village, probably. You could land a jet on it. So I don't know why we did that. I understand the road is done, but I don't understand why we added why I have 2 binder course layers now. That's why the road is so high. And it results in 2 problems. And we've talked about these. I'm not happy with the road in general, not just my driveway, but the road in general. The surface of it is fine. It's a fantastic surface, but it's way too high. So if you read the second slide, the driveways, which we're here to talk about, I would like to be redone because I don't think that that needed to be done that way. And then the side slope is too aggressive, right? So Bob was kind enough to come out recently and talk to us, and he kind of educated me on what the standard is, and we identified a couple parts of the road where it is too steep. It's a safety issue. The road is egregiously thick. And you guys came in the village and added crushed asphalt, but you're asking a lot of that shoulder to support asphalt all by itself, and it's already washing away. So the next slide shows the driveways before anything was done. Just if you're curious, this is my driveway, probably a moot point, but shows how they grinded it, which was not very much, and laid asphalt over it. But this also supports my point that if you would have just done one layer, which I think we only needed a surface layer, we wouldn't have any of these problems. The asphalt comes to the end of my driveway. The road is not egregiously thick. I don't understand why we didn't do that. I understand the ship has sailed, so to speak, but I don't understand why we didn't just do one layer. And I haven't gotten an answer on that. The next slide shows the driveway, my driveway again, finished, which I think you've all seen it. So maybe it's, again, a moot point, but the way that it was ground and the way the asphalt was added is, not very aesthetically pleasing. I understand that it's in the right of way, but I think the project could have been done differently where you didn't have to do it this way, is kind of our point. The next slide shows the slope when the road was finished before you added any shoulder. And that's not what it looks like today, but my main point there is that it's unbelievably thick. It's about 7 inches thick. Maybe 6 inches, but because it falls away into a ditch, it's an egregiously steep angle. And so the next slide just shows more angles of that. That's, maybe overkill, but it doesn't look like that today, so you won't go out and see it like that. And then the last slide just shows some pictures in my front yard where the asphalt that you're asking to be a shoulder, you're actually asking it to be a retaining wall, and it's already washing away. So it's going to be a maintenance item forever. It's not going to stay put. It's washing away, okay, because the road is too thick. And then the last thing that I don't understand, which I understand the road is done, but every other rural subdivision that was part of the road construction improvement project last year was not done this way. It was milled out, taken down, done the way I would have liked to seen mine done, and I have not gotten an answer on why this one was done differently. The only answer I've gotten is that we didn't have a city engineer at the time and we kind of got lost in the shuffle. That's not an acceptable reason to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars. If we don't have a solid plan for how to deal with the fact that this neighborhood was never finished, let's pump the brakes and figure out how to do it right. So that's our argument. I understand that the road's not coming out. I don't really understand how we got here, but here's where we are. So what we're asking for on the last page is that anybody who would like their driveway to be put back the way it was, the village pay to put it back. I don't really see how I'm at fault and have to owe $3,000 to have my driveway put back. And I would also like the village to survey the road, or it can be a visual survey. I don't know that it needs to be a design survey, but if there's parts of the road that don't meet the standard for side slope, that you need to address that with dirt and grading and reseeding, right? So that's what I'm asking for.
Questions?
Thanks, Adam.
You want to go ahead and ask?
What's that? Ask? No, I was just gonna give my opinion.
This gentleman come up with-
Okay. Yes.
I'm Jeff Meyer. I also live in Countryville Manor, N113 W21858 North Manor Court, actually right across the street from Adam. I agree with everything he said. I second it. One thing I do want to point out, notification was given that this road project was going to be done. It was given a day ahead of time by a sign being put in front of our subdivision that said, road work is going to start, go to this website, and on the web address, our subdivision was listed as a 2024 project. That was the day before it started. That was the only notification we were given. So again, anybody that saw the sign, like I did, I looked it up, like this doesn't apply to us. This is in 2023. So that's all I'd like to add.
Okay, thank you. I've just a dumb question. Why is that road so thick? Does that look unusual to you, Matt? I'm just curious because it just really does look like a waste of asphalt. I don't know anything.
Yeah, I mean, I can't speak to the
Yeah.
decisions that were made prior to me. And it is thick and it's probably just made worse in appearance by the pulverized base course that is under there. So it raised it up, an additional couple inches over what it would have been.
So this was, I mean, this is not a Payne and Dolan on the spot decision. They're following what we asked them to do,
Yeah,
correct?
This was the prescribed
Okay,
method for reconstructing this road.
okay. Bob?
Follow up on that? I don't know if this is an open discussion.
No, you have to come back up and then we're going to have our committee talk about it.
I mean, that's a valid question, Terry, that I've been asking over and over again. Like, I want to see the plans. So did Payne and Dolan do this on the fly, or what did the contract say? Did it say to add 2 layers?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so they were contracted to pulverize and add 2.
They did what they were asked to do is what the impression I'm getting.
Yeah, and it is an approach that the village takes, and we actually have roads coming up in this year's program that are taking the same approach for reconstruction.
The pulverize and overlay, but that thick?
No,
Okay, that was my thing. It just seems awfully thick.
So you're going to do 1 layer this time around? Meaning when in this upcoming plans, you pulverize and add 1 3-inch layer?
Kevin, you want to come up and he might have a little more detail on the
Right.
specifications.
Hi, the pulverize and reconstruct will have a 2-inch top coat and a 3-inch binder. So it's 5 inches in total. So that's the plan going forward. Previously, it was 2 and 2. So we may consider going back to 2 and 2 to be able to get more linear footage out of the paving contracts.
How does that affect the wear on the road or the longevity of it if you reduce it in terms of?
Well, in a subdivision like this where the traffic volumes are lower, I don't think we would see an impact.
Mhm.
For a road where there's a higher ADT, average daily traffic volume, then the pavement thickness design comes into as a factor based on it's what's called an easel, equivalent single axle loading, so that can be calculated into the design thickness.
Okay, thank you.
Kevin, are you talking about what the average road section will be as part of the reconstruction for this year? Is that your answer to that question?
So this year, what was specified in the contract documents is a continuation of what was previously identified, where there's the pulverize and reconstruct is to do just that, is to pulverize the existing asphalt and compact that to create additional subbase, and then put a 3-inch binder down, and then a 2-inch top coat. So it'd be a 5-inch
Yeah,
total.
that's pretty typical for rural sections. Low traffic, soils, I know we're not out there doing soil borings or anything like that, but
And like Kevin mentioned, and this is talking about future now, but we have discussed reducing that to 2 and 2 to get more bang for our buck out of the road program,
Mhm.
where it makes sense.
which doesn't help Adam or Jeff.
No.
But anyway, that's history moving forward now.
One quick follow-up on the thickness. So in the past, did we do the pulverized overload, then the 3, then the 2? Or is this
Yes.
something that's pretty new that we're doing it this way in the last year or 2?
That's a industry practice.
That is the, okay, that's
To
perfect.
do a pulverize and
That's
reconstruct.
redo. So that's
Because when you
industry.
pulverize it, it keeps the
Okay.
base there,
Yeah.
and the quality of the road
Mhm.
is really contingent upon the base.
Right.
So by having that additional base course, that allows for a longer longevity
Okay.
or better longevity of a road. But the mill and overlay is the other standard practice
Mhm.
that's been incorporated.
And
For-
likely the problem with the mill and overlay was just the lack of depth on the existing base course. And they had to have a way to deal with that.
Mm-hmm.
So we know if we're going to rubbleize and you're not hauling that material out, that your profile is naturally going to be higher because you got all that material there and you're building on top of it.
Correct.
So it's intuitive that you're going to have a higher profile by the end of the day when you do that type of a construction method.
Right. So if the steepness of the shoulder is coming into that and factoring in the width of the travel lanes or the width of a cul-de-sac could be adjusted to accommodate for that taper off the shoulder so it doesn't get so thick compared to putting the asphalt all the way up to the edge, and then it has that steep drop off.
You can kind of
So the-
feather it out or thin it out as you get near the edge to a point.
To a point. And
Right.
so a remedy to correct that, there's two options, I suppose. Reditching, where you could shift the alignment of the flow line of the ditch. In this case, that would probably be shifted further into the yard. And then that would require additional restoration and it would impact the front yard. An alternate to that, which may appear less favorable, would be to saw cut and remove the asphalt and then potentially put something other than the recycled asphalt, potentially a traffic bond, which will firm up and hold pretty well to be able to soften that edge so there's a gentler slope.
Okay, thank you.
What I would add to that for consideration is keeping in mind funding sources, when you're considering the options that are presented for you. And that in our street operations budget, we don't have room to make those kind of corrections. And it would really have to be something that would be taken out of this year's road program in order to be able to afford those kinds of corrections. And we did have favorable bids on the 2024 road program. But there are a few unknowns that we still haven't checked off, particularly the status of our LRIP projects and how much those will eventually be when they're bid out.
So it'd be the end of the year before you knew if there'd be leftover money for anything,
It'll
basically.
be later this year, maybe not
Yeah.
end of the year, but
Okay,
yeah,
well,
later
that's
this year.
fair. Yeah. Bob, anything else?
Yeah, so I'm like a lot of people here. I had to get up to speed on the past history. A lot of this predates me. So I met with Jeff and I met with Adam on site on Saturday. And then I met with Kevin and Matt and Jake. Jake's the inspector who was out on the job. So he had some good relevant information as far as what actually went down out there. And I met with a village administrator also just to try to get all of this into one big aggregate to see what my opinion would be on it. So what I saw out there, in my professional opinion, is the product is very good. The road is a good roadway. The driveway approaches were done very good. There's no big breaks in the grade. It's a nice smooth transition. So, I mean, from the engineering perspective, it looks good to me. I would approve that project. It was done by a contractor who's probably the best paving contractor in the Midwest, Payne and Dolan. So whenever I would see them on my projects, I felt, oh, I can kind of relax a bit because I know these guys are conscientious and they're going to do a good job with that. So that's that side of it. There's a lot of convoluted history here. There were gaps in expertise in the area from the village's perspective. We talked about permits not being taken out. Um, You know, over 15 years, if I was a resident, I would assume that this road is done. And the condition of the road wasn't that bad as far as the residents' observations, although that comment was countered by Jake saying that the Paisley rating was starting to get lower on this road, and that's why it turned up on our radar. Paisley rating is how we rank all of our roads to be able to triage and address the most critical roads. So it was on the Paisley ratings, and it wouldn't have gotten on there if we didn't see that there were some issues like soft spots or alligator cracking or things like that. So that's what prompted it. Having money left over from the 2023 fund allowed us to sometimes throw projects in so we can address those. And my thought was, well, sometimes when you hurry up to try to shove something into a schedule, some things might get lost. But after talking with the Director of Public Works and the city engineer and the inspector, I don't feel that was the case. I think they still follow the proper professional procedure in preparing this road for preparation. I think 2020 being, hindsight being 2020, should we have gone out there and walked the project before work started? Because it's been 15 years. Yeah, we should have done that. And then would we have had the clairvoyance to say, for the person who's doing that walkthrough, hey, now remember, we're going to rubbleize and we're going to put 2 levels of asphalt in here, so it's going to be higher. Now let's take a look at what's that doing to the road or to the driveway approaches. What is that doing to the side slopes and that? But, you know, hindsight's 2020 on the whole thing. Had permits, I think some permits were taken out, was my understanding. There were some discussions in the field with the residents expressing some concern. I think the residents, in their opinion, feel that they weren't listened to. We weren't very responsive for them. You know, we talk about communication now in this day and age, and, you know, that's where it can hurt you if we don't have the proper communication. But, I mean, that's all hindsight. The other concern too is the side slope, like we talked about, 4 to 1, 4 feet every 1 or 1 foot every 4 feet is standard. And in my opinion, what you have out there, at least in front of Adams' property, is a safety concern. If a car gets off on the edge, you know, that's, I don't know if they could recover. And I think talking with Matt and Kevin, we're going to try to get out there before this meeting and take a peek at that. But you've addressed some ways that that can be addressed, but we're not here really to talk about the side slope, are we? Maybe we should
We're
just
for the driveways.
just focus about the driveways and that. So a lot of, I'm talking a lot here. I guess my opinion is I would not replace these driveways because of the rideability and how they were constructed. Okay, so that's my opinion on it. One thing to keep in mind that when you go in and you replace portions of concrete like this, Adam, you talked about put back as it was. You're not going to have a driveway as it was, even if we go back in and replace it. Because concrete ages, it bleaches. We're going to we'd put in fresh concrete. We'd match the existing joints. I noticed there was window painting treatment on the edges. We'd do all of that. But texture and the color, I guarantee you, it's going to be different. There's going to be a portion of where we do match in now to the existing asphalt road. They have to cut out a 1 or 2 foot portion so they can put concrete forms in there. And you put the asphalt back in. Now that's going to look different too. Different color, could be a different texture in that. So, you know, just a heads up, it's not going to be perfect and like it was before if we go in and do this. So it's my opinion.
Rick?
You want everybody's opinion. I'm no road builder, so I go by observation. And yes, I've driven out there. I looked through it. I thought the road was in fine shape after it was done. I saw that the side slopes were were pretty steep, and I understand that. So there isn't much we can do about the road. We can talk about right of way. I know that you don't want to hear about right of way. We don't either. I do think that when we came up with this plan to try to correct it and make, make some amends here, the 50% was a good number, and we've always gone on that premise. I guess it just wasn't finally approved. I will say that we have done a few other roads in this area. One that I know pretty well is Water Street between County Line and Concord. It's done in the exact same fashion. And I have friends and relatives that live there, and they're okay with it. They're happy with the road. Now, they had both courses prior to this, but it was a pulverize and reconstruct. And I haven't heard any issues with that. That's just one example that I can cite. I know there's probably some on the other side of that as well. So I would be in favor of what we recommended here is the 50% share on the people who want to take advantage of it.
Bill?
I too am not a road expert, and I'm not going to comment on the road other than to say Bob is far more knowledgeable than I. What I look at this from is we could have done a better job in communicating with our residents about upcoming work. And this is a ongoing theme that we have heard over the past year to 18 months. And I question if we would have, and I'm, hindsight being 2020, of course, if we would have communicated in a more effective manner, would the outcome have been different? Right? And having gone out there and walked the subdivision and talked to some of the homeowners, I do believe that if our communication methods would have been different, we wouldn't have this item on our agenda tonight. I would favor a percentage larger than 50% to fix the aprons, and I do understand it will not look as it did in the past. And I think the residents realize that also, but it does not look to me as visually appealing as it has in the past. And I think as a good faith effort, we should be more in the neighborhood of 75 to 100% to restore those aprons. That's my personal opinion. It's not a comment on the quality of the job that was done. The quality is there. Could the village have done a better job communicating and getting our message out? And I think unfortunately, yes, we could have, and I would like the opportunity to make it up to the residents if we can do that at all. Thank you.
I'll entertain a motion, Bill, if you want to come up with something different. Or anybody.
I will make a motion to approve a reimbursement of 100% for the apron work that the 6 residents are asking.
And money coming from what area? The road program?
It would almost have to come from the road program. I'd like to say the ARPA funds, but
They're gone.
they're, so I can't. That would be the easy and convenient
Do
answer.
we have a
but-
motion? Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, for discussion, we don't have the money in the budget, so they're going to wait a long time for those aprons if we approve it at 100%. Or somebody, one entire neighborhood will not get their road done this year. I personally think the 100% is a little too high. You could get me probably at 75%, but 100 I cannot support. Rick, any other comments?
No, I guess I'm going to stick with 50. So
Okay, so we have a motion, we have a second. Any more discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
Aye.
Two opposed, two in favor. It will be, not be on the consent agenda, and the village board will have to take a look at it. Okay? Does that make sense to you? It was a 2-2 vote for 100%. So the village board will be looking at this as a separate agenda item, probably at the next village board meeting, I would imagine. Okay?
Yeah, we'll
It-
carry it over to the next village
Yeah.
board meeting,
It goes-
Monday the
it-
15th.
It goes with no recommendation to the village board, and then the whole village board decides.
I see. So whether it's 50 or 100 is still up for,
You
that's what
bet.
they're deciding.
Yeah, no decision was technically made.
Okay.
Okay? Thank you for coming, and we'll let you know the next village board meeting is what is it?
15th Monday.
This next upcoming Monday. Will it be on that agenda, Matt?
Yeah, we'll
Okay,
move
Monday,
on to that agenda.
7 o'clock.
Next Monday at 7 o'clock?
Right.
Okay. And do I need to try and get on this meeting's agenda about the side slopes?
I think we can take a look at that. We'll decide when and if that's on the agenda, so you won't have to come back for that because it's been brought up by the village engineer as well. Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for coming.
Yeah, can I ask one technical?
Sure.
So he had mentioned feather into the driveway, you know, that would have been one way to have done it. Is that actually that intersection, which was also flush before and is still flush after?
No.
Because they did not raise, they flushed that, and every intersection they have curves. That have a four-way intersection, and those were flush before, and they're still flush after, they didn't, so were those feathered? That, what was done?
Let me come to the microphone.
Okay, I would just,
Yeah, I think I understand the question. What traditionally would probably happen is the asphalt pavement would get milled down, and then it would get matched back into with a butt joint. So when that binder existed for so many years, it was flush, and there wasn't a drop off from where it matched to the other asphalt. And then to come in and do that reconstruction, that, well, if it was pulverized, then they would have just feathered it down and thin that section out. In some cases, it could be milled out and then matched in.
concrete curb.
Concrete curb.
And the concrete curb at the four-way intersection where Manor Court.
I think, yeah, and I think without looking at it, we're just kind of
Yeah. we're-
guessing at what happened. I mean, we'd be more than,
Where that on city concrete, it's feathered. But on the homeowner's driveway concrete, they just said, you know what, we're gonna go full 6 inches and pave with the top. Okay, I just wanted to get that
But-
on record.
Do you want to come up, Scott, and comment on this?
Sorry.
The city concrete would have been set to the correct elevation when the road was constructed, and there would have been a ramp up to it. So when it was pulverized, it came out flush again. What we're missing here is the driveways were set to the binder elevation, and that's why there's a difference between the driveway elevation and the curbs. The curbs were originally set to the right elevation for the road construction to have a finished course on it when it was originally designed, excuse me, and constructed.
There was no drop at the curb. I mean, I've been there 11 years. There was no curb and then drop the road. It was flush.
It would have been ramped up.
And it was flushed out.
Okay, we're going to move on. Yeah. The agenda item, Adam, is going to be driveways, just so we know. It won't be drop-offs and ditches, and it'll be driveways on the village meeting. And that's what we'll have to stick to, okay? Okay, thank you both for coming. And we will move on to B. Mrs. Karen Rice, appeal of Public Works mailbox damage determination.
and while Ms. Rice is walking up here, I can give just a brief history on what happened. Her mailbox was damaged in the January large snow event. It was one of 130 some mailboxes that were damaged during that event, and that's unfortunate. We're obviously doing our best not to have a repeat of that event. But after she reported it, as is our procedure, we sent an inspector out to take a look at it, and they determined that the damage was caused by the weight of the snow and not a direct plow blade strike. When there is a direct plow blade strike, the resident is eligible for a $75, and now that's been increased to a $100 reimbursement for cost to repair their mailbox. Usually, when we go out and inspect these mailboxes, we're looking for evidence of direct contact. So a mark from the blade, paint transfer, something along those lines. And that wasn't evident with this mailbox.
Mrs. Rice, would you like to say anything? Would you like to talk at all? Okay, just pull the microphone down.
Classroom.
You have to pull it down towards your mouth a little bit there. Okay. And do we have her address and name, or do we need to get that? Okay. Okay, we'll go with that. Okay, go ahead, Mrs. Rice. Please.
First of all, I want to really express my appreciation to Matt, who I contacted in his third week in his job. He actually came out and took the time to look at Cedar Lane and what happened there. And I really appreciate the time Terry gave me during the storm. Not only took my call, she actually called me back with further information. About my mailbox, I've lived here 47 years. I love this community. I've served the school district for 24, but I have some concerns about what's happened in the process of making an appeal when this happens. And I know some of my neighbors are too. I made flyers for all of them. Most felt that, and I've had the situation myself, that most of the time when they tried the process of the appeal, that it's just stated that, sorry, it wasn't the village's fault. And these are my concerns about it. The process and the criteria to determine the fault in the relation to the damage being done by the plow. And when I wasn't able to attend on the 7th, but I listened to the YouTube, there's quite a bit of statistics of discussion regarding the reimbursement, but there wasn't any terms of comparing other communities, the number of mailboxes that were damaged and the proportion of them that were repaired. That community took responsibility for them. I did call Cedarburg, although they are half our population. They only had 10 mailboxes damaged. They deemed 8 of them their responsibility. One chose not to have the Cedarburg repair them. And so I look at 6 of 132, was less than 10% of people in the community whose mailbox was damaged received a retribution for that. I valued the conversation you had regarding increasing the cost that was reimbursed, but if it's only less than 10% of people receiving that, it didn't make a difference to me. In respect to the rationale, I know this was a unprecedented event. Having been a resident here for 47 years, An incidence of a damaged mailbox over 30 years ago. A very large cedar mailbox made in my father's Blifford Lumber Company that literally was damaged and non-repairable. This was 30 years ago, Germantown, different size community population. They rebuilt it and reinstalled it for me. But it was one out of 30 some years. In the last 5 years, I've had 3 mailboxes. 2 looking like this, and one, the mailbox itself was a half-mile down the road, completely missing the door, missing parts, and my mail was strewn in snowbanks. I was denied reimbursement each time, and I found that when I listened to the conversation, that what was looked at in the appeal, why mailboxes were denied it indicated that improper location. I got the exact information from my meticulous neighbor next door, post office. It is in the correct position. Cheap materials. This was not a cheap wood post. Rotten? No. Old? It had only been 2 years since the last strike when it was replaced. And then poor insulation. And this is my shout out to the school district. My role and responsibility was working with department chairs, and one of my favorite was the director of technology and construction. And he very kindly recommends a student to me each year. This student that installed this for me was our state champion in the State Skills USA competition, went to nationals and took 3rd place. So I think my installation was perfect. And my other question was the process of appeal. This was at my house. And when Matt visited me, he saw my mailbox and explained to me that it wasn't his role to make that decision. And it was indicated that the staff has determined that the damage was not a result of village equipment physically striking the mailbox, and the village is not responsible for repairs. And that listed below was a phone number to call if you have any questions. I detailed my calls. I called 10 times. There was a recording. The recording said that it took no messages and to leave a text. And I left 3 different texts without response. So I felt I didn't have chance to appeal. And this is my appeal. This mailbox is Southern Yellow Pine. The reference I received was I inquired to Blifford to where to get this information. And this is what they shared with me. If you are looking to build an outdoor structure, SYP is indubitably the strongest and most durable of woods in North America. The strength of Southern Yellow Pine is so high, its modulus of rupture can be up to 12,000 PSI, pounds per square inch. I understood the force, maths, and acceleration, as one of my roles was coordinating science in the school district. And that in looking at my mailbox, I don't think it was force, mass, and acceleration. What's left standing is the other side of this. It is exactly where it is in 2 bags of Duracrete. It is perfectly level still. you cannot budget. And so my concern was, it said that someone had come to my home to look at it. When my plow person came down the driveway, I received a call that he said, your mailbox is gone again. And he recovered it. It was also over a quarter mile down the road, buried in a snowbank. So Paul had some contact with taking it there.
Mrs. Reese, am I pronouncing it Reese or Rice? Miss Rice. We're going to talk about that now. Do you think that it was actually struck by the plow? Is that why you're appealing? You think the plow struck it, but is there a mark on it or? Okay, well, let's, yeah. I thought you were out there, Matt. Mhm. Mhm.
So what was left standing the other side of that.
Mhm. Okay, thank you. Matt, you want to add, you went out to the site, correct? If I recall, because
went
we
out.
talked about it, yeah.
I went out and talked to Karen, as she mentioned. And in addition to me coming out, we did have our inspector who does all these inspections go out. It's probably true if Karen says so, that the mailbox wasn't immediately in the proximity of where it normally was. And we do see that the weight of the snow can carry the mailbox down. Our inspectors know to look for that stuff and do find the mailboxes further down the road. I think those are the two facts. I did withhold my judgment and have our inspector make the determination as he normally would. But if you look at the mailbox, I think it's evidence that there's splintering and not like a shearing that might come from the direct blade contact. So I think they made the proper determination, and I guess we're here to resolve it today.
Okay, committee? Bill?
So you live, the street runs east-west, correct? And you live on the south side of the street, right? The street runs east-west and you live on the south side of the street, right? Okay. In looking at your mailbox, the box would be toward the street, right? Okay. And if the plow had hit it, the part that hit it would be on the mailbox. The force, it would not have fractured that way. There's no way, because the plow would hit it from this way. And this is the part that broke away. And this is the part that is still standing. Right? That's,
We need to hold it up.
yeah, if you don't mind.
Yeah, one of my questions was, how high is the wing?
3 feet, Scott?
This is here, right? Standing here on this side. This part is still in the ground. It couldn't be. Because part that hit it from the mailbox. This is still vertical. Well, could
It have hit it. The accident.
and we would see it.
See the damage on the mailbox.
Yeah.
There had to be damage. Because I don't want to this really. If the part where it's broke is still vertical in the ground like this, how could it hit? That to break off, right?
Well, the snow hit it.
The snow hit.
Yeah.
But,
The only evidence we
But
can use
she's
is there's-
contending that the plow hit it.
well, right. We don't see plow marks. That's the only thing we can go by.
and we know what part is sticking in the ground too.
That plow, Scott, that plow blade is way underneath the box itself, right? From what I remember? Right?
I think it's the snow. It's gotta be the snow.
Typically, the wing will float underneath the mailbox. One other really big thing with the storm or the series of storms, if you remember too, the roads were getting narrower as the snow was falling, right? We were having a harder time even getting back far enough to get close to the mailboxes. That was a challenge in and of itself. So we weren't, during that series of storms, we weren't crawling underneath the mailbox like we normally might. We were actually even further away from it just because of the amount of snow we were pushing. Again, that's where a lot of our damage was coming from, was that weight of the snow. It wasn't, we weren't
Weight of
close
the
enough
snow
to
and
physically
the
get,
speed to move through it.
yeah.
I just have a question for Scott. So Scott, that area of Cedar Lane between Country Air and Wasaki, is that typically a pretty heavy, or do you see a lot more snow accumulating there?
East and west roads, especially when you're getting a northeast wind, we get a lot of drifting and things of that nature. Anywhere out on the north end, there's a lot of drifting, but yes, we can get a lot of drifting out in that area.
And this third time for you in 30 years?
Third time in 5 years, I thought.
3 times in 5.
Yeah.
The other time. Red Cedar, Oaks. And it was absolutely like, there was literally a square. And going up and along, my house is solid. Outside, it was perfectly silver. The inside was bright red cedar.
Mhm.
At that time, I was told that it was rotten. It's a rotten.
Well,
It was-
but we're dealing with this time today, and in the interest of dealing with this time, I asked the committee, what do we want to do here? We have to get a motion on the floor and seems the general.
All right, I guess
consensus is weight of snow.
I guess I'll start. I mean, Phil made a good point that part of the post is still in the ground and it would have been sheared if the plow had hit it, and there's no damage on the mailbox where a plow could have hit it as well. I don't see, based on what our reimbursement policy is, that we can cover this. I feel for you. I'm on Freistadt Road. It's 45 miles an hour. I've lost mailboxes. I feel for you.
Mine's still.
But I understand that this is not in that reimbursable area, so I'm going to make a motion to deny the claim.
Second.
Could you please go to the microphone, Ms. Reese? Thank you.
Discussion on the YouTube about part of this is just living rurally. And just because the speed limit is 45 miles an hour, it was on Cedar Lane. I actually, when there were 8 school-age children at the village, and that it was reduced to 40. I just don't understand why a plow in that type of unprecedented snow would need to be going 45 miles an hour down a 1-mile road.
Well, you misunderstood me. I'm just on a very fast road. The plows don't go the speed limit when they're plowing. And, however, it's just the amount of snow and the amount of traffic, the weight of the snow can carry. And like I said, I've lost several mailboxes over 25 years that I've been there. So I understand.
We have a second. to the
I
motion?
second
Yeah,
it.
Bob seconded.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll vote. All in favor of denying the claim, it was supposed to be made in the positive. Yeah, it was.
Okay, I'll amend my motion to approve the claim. Is that right?
Yeah, that would, you have to do that just to approve it. And then your second is,
Then I want it. Second.
because it has to be in the positive.
Yeah.
Okay. Any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll vote. All in favor? No, you're not in favor.
All in favor?
Yeah,
You said.
All in favor of approving the claim.
All in favor of
Oh,
approving the claim.
okay.
it's in the positive. Okay. And all opposed? Aye.
Aye.
So it's unanimous. I'm sorry, but we're going to follow the policy.
They denied your appeal.
You know, what would save me all of this is that there's actually somebody answering.
We can look into that for sure.
And we have.
I agree. Yeah.
Said, no, we're denying your request.
Mhm.
because
Yes, we agree.
You're in the video, another person discussing that.
Thank you.
I appreciate your time.
Thank you so much for coming, and I'm so sorry it worked out this way. but it's the way it is. We're following policy. All right, C, Renwood North, Newman Developments, Development Agreement Amendment.
So we were approached by Newman Developments to amend the development agreement for the development of Renwood North. And I can outline kind of the gist of the amendment, and then Mr. Anderson from Newman is here as well if you have any questions for him. But what it comes down to is that they're requesting that the development be further divided into a third phase. It was approved as a two-phase project, and they're requesting that that be extended into 3 phases. The development agreement also addressed eventual ownership of some outlots that are in the development, and that was at the request of the village. And then additionally, at the request of the village, we specified that there be a berm and some landscaping placed on some specified outlots to help in some screening efforts for adjoining properties.
I guess I'd like to hear from you about why we're dividing it into 3 from 2. Give us some background and some information on why we're doing this.
Right, thanks, Matt. Kevin Anderson with Newman Developments. I guess just to keep it short is we originally thought it was going to be a 2-phase subdivision, 46 lots, 47 lots. We had the parade of homes there. If you've driven through there, you've seen there's numerous houses. There's still quite a few empty lots, but we like to keep like a 2-year inventory. 46 lots or 47 lots right now would just be too much inventory to throw out on the market. Sales are going okay, but it's not, it's not gangbusters out there. We do want more lots to keep the builders busy. That said, we are proposing to put it into 2 different phases. This one we're proposing goes up to Frystad, gets the second connection, which makes a lot of sense. In phase 1, we built most of the storm ponds. We put in all the water and sewer. So this is simply doing those laterals, doing some storm sewer, and finishing roads. And so we came and we asked to split it into 2 phases. The way we're looking at right now, we would build phase 2 this year. We would skip 1 year and we'd finish it in 2026.
Okay. And the cement, and so this is something that was brought to you, is this before Plan Commission as well or not?
This won't, but it will
Okay.
go to village board, and then there's an additional item down the road, final plat, which will go to plan commission. But yeah, this development was worked out cooperatively between the village and Newman and reviewed by the village attorney. So
Okay.
we're happy with it and are requesting approval.
And no change in the number of lots, you're just going to
Same
Fewer
number of lots.
the next
just
phase and then skip the year. Okay.
made no
Committee?
changes to the platting.
Rick?
Yeah. Hi, Kevin. I got a couple questions. Number one, in the developer's agreement, do we have a set timeline, or is this just a proposed timeline for the 2 phases? I don't remember what was in the developers agreement, and to be honest, I didn't read the whole thing again.
Current development agreement anticipated a timing. We have a letter of credit posted to finish it. I guess what we're trying to do is, rather than, we could wait till next year in our development agreement. We don't like to get the inventory that low, because then what happens is some of the builders don't have lots, and then when they lose momentum, and they sell their model home and they leave the subdivision. Kind of in a spot where all 47 lots is just too much inventory. People see all these empty lots and are like, oh, well, there's always going to be a lot of them in a hurry. To the point where if we wait another year, we're not going to have enough lots. So we're trying to get something that keeps the builders happy, keeps them active in the subdivision, but doesn't put too many lots on the market. So I think by the terms of the current DA, we would have to finish the entire thing next year. Don't want to wait till next year to do any lots, or we're trying to make a solution that works for the village, the developer, and the home builders.
Any downside from your perspective, Matt?
No, I think, like I said, we worked on this cooperatively, and I think it's a reasonable approach to take.
Okay.
I think it's minor, but the only downside I see is that there's a path on the easement that goes between Renwood North and Renwood South, and that would not be completed then for another couple of years. I mean, the hookup to that, I think the path is there already.
We did complete the path,
Yeah.
and as part of phase one, we put a aggregate path, an aggregate road, 12-foot wide. I think there's 10 inches of stone that's connecting along the sewer route.
You can get access to it.
Right, so that
Okay.
DPW can have access to all the sewer manholes. And as part of phase two, we would dress that up and clean it up and, and refresh it as needed. So we're going to
Gotcha.
keep that accessible so they can get to all the manholes.
Okay, all right, thanks.
Entertain a motion.
I would make a motion to approve the development agreement with, on Renwood North by Newman Developments.
Second.
The amendment.
Yeah.
Okay. Any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll vote. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's unanimous, but this will not be on consent agenda. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Moving on to E, or rather D, 2024 Digital Construction Message Center Purchase.
So as part of the 2024 highway capital budget, we had $25,000 allotted for this purchase. Scott and his team got some quotes, the results of which are listed in the agenda item, but a low bid from Stalker Radar for the amount of $20,125 that we would like to award to them for the purchase of this. It's worth noting that this piece of equipment is very similar, same manufacturer, and similar to one that's used in the police department. So that'll enable us to possibly allow shared use at times with potentially the police departments, with engineering, with others. And it also has some, economies of scale for maintenance purposes.
Okay, Mitty?
That is this variable, it's basically a variable message sign.
Yeah, it's a message board.
Okay,
It does have some other features like radar included that,
yeah.
we could use cooperatively with police.
In the description, you implied that it could be used for updates on projects and things like that.
And that's primarily what it would be used for streets and highway, to notify residents of upcoming work and,
Okay.
talk about detours or whatever the case might be.
Future
But
closures, all of
Yeah,
that. Okay. Right, that's what you meant. Right, sounds good. Thanks.
I'll move approval of the purchase of a Stalker Construction Message Center from Applied Concepts not to exceed $20,125.
Second.
More discussion? Vote, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's unanimous. Moving on to E, Wisconsin Department of Transportation Road Salt Contract.
So we recently had to communicate with the state about our intentions to buy salt from them next year. As the item notes here, we plan to purchase 2,280 tons of salt. And then the cost per ton isn't identified yet, but will be later after it's bid by the state. Currently in storage, we have 2,884 on hand. What we'd like to do is be able to use that existing stock that's in hand and in the current salt dome, and also put salt in our new salt shed at the Public Works. And this is following the formula that the state provides for estimating, the salt that you'll need for the coming year.
Is it generally right? It says $92 is the estimated cost per ton. Do we know what it was last year ultimately?
It was a little less.
Know that? $87 is what we're hearing from our Department of Highways Director. Okay, so 87, so it's a little bit higher.
And that's an estimate. Anything could happen, but
And we need the
estimating for
salt.
some inflation.
Yeah,
and we do need
obviously.
the salt.
Do we use less salt now that we brine, or is that not really does that not really affect our salt usage?
I think,
Sorry. Come on.
yeah, I mean, Scott can come up, but
We
I
just like to hear Scott's voice once in a while.
think we do brine and especially pre-treat. I think
Yeah.
Where we'll see more significant reductions is when we expand our brine capability. We have some new equipment coming online at the Public Works facility that allow us to produce our own. So I think, speaking for myself and
Interesting.
potentially for Scott down the road, we may be able to see, reduced levels of salt consumption because of brine.
Yeah, and to just pick up off of Matt's sediment there, right now we're buying brine from the county, and so transporting that is cumbersome.
Oh, I bet.
And when we have the ability to make it right in our own yard, I'm hoping to expand that. I mean, you're seeing it on main thoroughfares. I'm hoping to expand that into subdivisions eventually. That'll obviously take additional pieces of equipment and time to do it. I think to answer the question specifically, which was, are we seeing a reduction in salt? I think, anti-icing is what that's called when we're out doing that in advance. And I think what we're really noticing is that helps prevent like bonding when we're not here, like when the storm is first getting started, if we're here, if it's off hours or something like that, it's helping keep that ice from bonding onto the pavement, which will reduce the salt a little bit. But I think it's just helping us get a jump start on the operation and
Okay.
reduce the amount of hard pack we get.
Okay, awesome.
Biggest
Thank you.
benefit.
Thank you. Quick question for you. So now with our new facility, we're going to have the ability to create our own brine and stuff. Is that correct?
Correct.
That's awesome. That's another,
Yeah, it's something to look forward to.
wait to have our tour of that facility.
It's coming up.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like Scott alluded to, in order to distribute the brine, apply it to the level that he's talking about, we'll probably need to make additional investments in our fleet too, in order to
Oh, boy.
carry that out. But I think in the end, I think we can see some pretty significant reductions in salt. Where I came from in Walworth County, we started as one of the highest salt users and county-wise in the state. And over a 5-year period, saw ourselves in the top 5 or the bottom 5, I guess, of salt use.
Well, DNR is really kind of cracking down on that, aren't they?
Yeah, we'll be talking about the MS4 permit and some of the requirements
Yeah.
of that a little bit later. But salt reduction is one of those as well.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Quick one, Scott. So this would be a retrofit to our existing patrol trucks to be able to disseminate
Yep.
brine, basically putting a tank on the back.
Yeah, so actually, the rest of the committee may remember over the last couple of years, we bought a couple items called a Salt Snow Extreme, which is an insert. It's a box that goes in. It's a V box that carries salt, and then it can carry 1,000 gallons of brine.
Okay.
So it acts both as the salt applying device and the anti-icing device.
So is it your goal to get every patrol truck to have this capability, or?
No, I don't think so. They're 90-some thousand a piece. We own 2 of them. In order to expand that operation, here's the thing. I mean, when you're anti-icing, it's the most effective when you can get it down right before the event, right? But when you're starting to talk about subdivisions, if you're doing it a day or 2 in advance, you're still going to have some positive effect from that. So I would like to, I would like to think that we'd add a few more, but it certainly isn't something where we're going to have one in every
Okay.
truck.
Your anti-icing is very helpful for forecasting bad weather, because whenever I see that, it's like, oh, there must be some weather moving in.
Thank you, Scott.
You're welcome.
Do we have a motion?
We don't. I do have a question before a motion. I know that's kind of backwards, but,
It's okay.
so I guess my question is that we have 2,800, almost 2,900 tons of salt on hand. You want to purchase another up to 2,280. How much do we have to purchase? What are we obligated to? Because we've never used 5,000 tons of salt.
I don't think we're obligated to purchase any. We do want to continue to be a part of the contract, and I think it makes
Yeah.
sense to continue to buy.
So this would be more like a blanket order when needed,
Would come
to
in
purchase up
2
to
or
that
3
much.
2 or 3
We are
deliveries.
obligated.
You are.
Yeah, we make an obligation to the state when we're becoming part of the contract.
There's a minimum purchase?
Yeah, so again, what we do is we figure, we talked a lot about this during the budget process in 2023, as we were discussing the 2024 budget. We talked about being commodity wealthy, which is where we're going to be after this. And that's really being driven because of our new campus and the need to have salt at that location. As you can imagine, when we're preparing for a storm, when we're coming into the end of the shift and we're getting ready to load the trucks again for the next morning, we have to be able to have salt at that location. We also needed salt in order to operate out of this location. And so we talked last year as we were diving back and forth in the budget about being commodity wealthy. And that's exactly where we're going to be. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be buying up to 1,200 ton of what's called early fill salt, which is budgeted in the 2024 budget. But the commitment that we've made for, and I want to get my numbers right, I think it's 2,700 ton of additional salt that will be to operate basically out of the new campus and still have a little bit left over, hopefully at the end of the winter. And that will come out of the 2025 budget. So this is very typical. We always come to you, we make this commitment, the timing of finishing winter, the deadline
Starting
of
a new
getting the
one.
paperwork turned back in, and then our next meeting. We're always coming back in after the fact and kind of talking to you about it after we've made that commitment.
And we're going to have 2 salt stores, right? We're keeping the existing one?
We are, and our northern and western routes will use that satellite spot just to top off a truck. So like the fact that we're finishing up really very full because of a mild winter and the commitments we made last year, I think it's going to be a really, really long time, probably 4, 5, 6 years before we ever have salt delivered out to that location again.
I
So
see.
commodity wealthy, we're in a good spot. $7 per ton is what the increase was last winter. So that's why I went from 87 to 92. I don't think it'll be that much. But when you're talking about going up $7 a ton in a single year, it's not a bad place to be to have a commodity that you can use. It's not going to go bad.
So it makes sense to me. It doesn't make sense to move everything that's here.
Right.
Just deplete that as it comes
You got it.
and then restock over there.
You got it.
I understand
I
now.
think we'll always use that
Mhm.
current location as a strategic location for reloading during storms. So it
Mhm.
may deplete to a point, several years down the road where we do want to do a fill. But for now, this will kind of build everything up so we're in a good position in both spots.
Salt never gets old, does it?
No.
Oh, perfect.
It doesn't get old and
Yeah.
it doesn't
Okay.
get cheaper usually.
Okay. Okay. Do we have motion?
Motion, move approval of the Wisconsin DOT road salt contract as presented.
Second.
More discussion? We'll vote. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's unanimous. Moving on, library sump pump upgrade.
So this was a budgeted item in 2024, $13,000 allocated. We had a low bid from Hagen Plumbing in the amount of $10,770. There's a bit of a history and a portion of the pump, one of the 2 pumps that failed. We installed a backup pump last year. But because of the criticality of this, we want to be able to address this with a brand new pump that has dual capacity. So each pump in the pit has the capability of fully pumping out all the water that's needed. So that's what we're requesting here.
Okay, committee?
I'd make a motion to approve the 2024 library sump pump upgrade.
Second.
Discussion.
So I'll ask the question, much like the condenser project that we did. Does the library board weigh in on this, or is this ours?
I believe the funding is their budget. Is that right, Scott?
It's in our 2024 budget as the village.
They don't really spend, because it's our building, right?
Right.
We have to upkeep the building, is my understanding.
Yeah,
I think.
and I know trustee Hudson, I know there's been some back and
Yeah.
forth. I mean, we all know that, right? With, are they helping out with the roof or not helping? I don't know where that lands as far as the budget and the dollars come in. I just know for the project, the budget is, my 2024 budget reflects that in the library budget.
Well, thank you.
Any more discussion? Hearing none, we'll vote. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's unanimous. Thank you, Scott. Moving on, change order for Goldendale Booster Station Heat Cabling System.
So this is a change order that came up in the course of construction. The heat cabling system was not something that was specified originally in the project, but is needed. Water is moving through the facility and being discharged from the roof, from underground drainage, the analyzers from the pumps. All this water gets discharged. We need to make sure that it doesn't freeze up. So it's unfortunate that we didn't identify it as part of the design, but we do have this change order to address it now, and we do think it's critical to have. Koenig Construction is doing the build, and they would sub for Combs Electric to do this work for us.
What does that exactly look like? Is that like a heat tape or something? Like I'd put around my pipes in the barn or whatever? It's that expensive.
Well, I mean, it's in
Oh.
numerous locations.
Go to Fleet Farm. Committee?
I'll make a motion to approve the change order for the Goldendale Booster Station in the amount not to exceed $10,354.67.
I'll second with a question.
Um,
Who's the designer?
Both engineering.
Okay. Seems like something that's, how do you forget that?
Yeah, all I'll say is that there's a couple change orders on the agenda and maybe one that you'll see next month. I think in general, we need to take a step back and think about this stuff ahead of time and make sure that we're capturing everything that's needed. The next agenda item actually is one of those things. And partially that's on us, partially that's on FOTH. Certainly they're the experts in this category. But on this project, I guess we are where we are, and I think it is important. So we're seeking the approval.
I'm not saying that this is a situation, I've been in the industry, I get it. But if sometimes you get complacent, if you're the sole source, there's, I don't know. We're all professionals in the field, but sometimes after many, many years, I'd like to see some new blood in there.
I agree, and I think, we're kind of eyeballing a couple of different projects where we can create some competition there. Unfortunately, you're not going to see those today, but coming up for future work, where it makes sense to use both is in some of this like quickly developing area where we have a lot of integrated projects, but where there's more like one-off projects, a maintenance project off to the side or a rehab off to the side that doesn't affect the larger system as much. I think those are prime candidates for creating some of that competition and getting proposals.
Yeah, and that's a good point. I mean, continuity is huge. Say, well, a good example is the Grafe. They were the designers of that road project, and now they're going to inspect, plus the designers of the Public Works building too. So that continuity, you know, I understand that. That makes sense. You want them to be sole source.
I think Paul wanted to mention something here.
Just a little backstory on the heat tape. So originally it was designed not to have a heat tape. Our predecessor, Director of Public Works, it was recommended then to just dump it into a stone pocket on the property. Fast forward, there was no engineer at the time, and I made the choice to shed the water off the property through a drainage system that we had designed, which then didn't have a heat tape. Fast forward, hey, how are we going to prevent freeze up? So it's not both. It was me that made that decision.
Well, in that case,
Just a backstory.
just for the clarification.
Sure.
We have a motion. We have a second. Any more discussion? Hearing none, we'll vote. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous. Moving on to H, report on emergency purchase of PLC programming services for well 7.
So this is a purchase that we had to proceed with for the MCC panel replacement project at well 7. It's a project that began in 2022, but because of lead times and that sort of stuff, it's been kind of delayed until now. And part of the project is to replace these controllers, and we have a proprietary programmer, Rukert and Milky, who's done our PLC programming for a long time. And in order to fit onto an electrical subcontractor schedule and the Rukert and Milky schedule, we had to do the work now in order to avoid potentially conflicting with our obligation to flush hydrants throughout the village. And there was the possibility that if this was still going on, that we'd have limited capacity to do that. So we wanted to get this scheduled and happening so that we could complete the project, do the programming, and also complete the flushing on time.
This was money that was going to be spent anyway, correct, Matt?
It was.
Just the timing is,
Just the timing.
it had to match up timing. So it's not like it's a surprise $16,900. It was money to be spent. And as you had mentioned, in this case, Rupert Milky is proprietary in this for us. So it's not like it could have gone out to bid. Committee, I have a motion?
We need a motion?
It's just for information only, I guess. Yeah.
It's a report. And yeah, I mean, I guess the only other thing I would say is that we'd obviously like to follow normal purchasing procedures, and when, you know, authority is needed at certain approval levels, we'd like to follow that. This was just
This doesn't happen often.
No.
I know that, so. Okay, so for information only, just so we know. Okay. Paul,
I thought we were making a request for the 16,009.
this is a report.
did you, I think you already paid for it. No?
No, we haven't been invoiced. It's just the
Okay.
timing, but do we need a motion to approve?
It's like a change order. I think I personally would I would feel more comfortable doing a motion to approve this from our committee. If-
Yeah, and good point. It is an emergency, so.
Yeah,
I guess the word report threw me. So,
Okay.
I mean, normally when I see report, it isn't a motion, but I do see the recommendation at the bottom that says,
Just our spending authority over 15,000, kind of like other
Well,
emergency work.
significant amount of money, so I'll entertain a motion.
so I'll move approval of the, to approve the quote from Rukert and Milky in the amount of 16,900 for well 7 PLC programming.
Second.
I think we've had our discussion. We'll vote, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's unanimous. Right, moving on to award, are we on I already? My goodness, are we flying? Award of a contract to CTW Wells and Pumps in an amount not to exceed $30,000 for well cleaning and testing services.
so this was originally going to be another report item, but there's been some developments that we're now just seeking normal approval. So with well 12 going back several months, there was some additional testing that was required for PFAS. So we had to go into the well and do some testing and took some video eventually, but I guess step back. During that testing, the well was pumped and it didn't produce like it had originally when it was drilled. So the thought was, well, let's send a camera down and take a look. And when we went down and took a look at the well, there's some naturally occurring biofilm that's developed over the course of a couple years that requires a rehab treatment. And that rehab treatment originally was just going to be a chemical treatment in order to address it, which is standard and is expected to fully return the well to service. But after additional looks at the well and an in-depth look at the video, it's recommended now, and we have a couple different experts looking at this, to do a mechanical cleaning of the well in order to remove the film that's in place, to really see the evidence of the film and where it's sitting and how far it's gone into the cracks, to properly scope out the chemical treatment that's following this. And that's the nature of the request. So it's essentially become an issue because over 2 years of the well sitting still, that this film has developed, and it's something that was a little unexpected, but also, not out of the realm of possibility. So we're looking for this to be approved in order to do the mechanical cleaning and then proper scoping and sampling for the rehab, which will come before you as another item down the road. I'll also add that this is impacting the construction of the well 12 pump house and will cause delays with that project.
This is our newest well, correct?
Newest well.
Just so people listening know where the well is, it's the one on Goldendale, correct?
Yep.
Committee questions, comments, motion, Bill?
So am I not understanding? So in the summary explanation in the paragraph, it ends with in an amount not to exceed $30,000.
Correct.
But then in the recommendation, it says in the amount not to exceed $35,000.
That might be a clerical mistake. Also attached is the quote that we received from CTW, and it actually totals something around $28,000, but we're just asking for not to exceed 30 in case there were some unforeseen circumstances that might cause for a few additional charges there. But we're actually expecting it to be under 30,000.
Okay, I'll make the motion to approve a contract with CT Wells and Pumps in the amount not to exceed $30,000.
Second.
Go ahead.
So this is due to the pump sitting idle?
Yeah, likely due to the pump sitting idle. It's possible, that when it was drilled, it was introduced to different elements that caused, the film, but largely this is a naturally developing film that exists in other wells too that we treat for. But because it sat and hadn't been treated, it was allowed to build up to
It just
the
gets
level it is
worse,
now.
right?
Yep,
Yeah.
yep. And that's why we want to move quickly on this,
Mhm.
because the potential is that the condition could worsen over time, and we want to try to get in there, do the mechanical treatment, get the scope for the rehab, the chemical rehab, do that, and then proceed on with the rest of the well construction.
Okay, thank you.
What does film look like? Just
It's just
curious.
like a cloudy kind of, it almost looks like a jellyfish kind of.
So it's it's something, right? It's
Yeah,
something you could physically see and touch. It's
Yeah.
not just.
Yeah,
okay.
Paul and I have both
Cloudy
looked at the
water.
video
in
and,
the water.
it's just kind of a real, watery kind of amorphous sort of thing. but,
Okay,
Could we see a sample?
before we approve this.
I have a
Okay.
2-hour video. if you-
Oh, dear. Okay, we have a motion, we have a second. Any more questions or comments? Hearing none, we'll vote. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's unanimous. Moving on to J, Goldendale Booster Station, SCADA Programming and System Integration Agreement.
So this is a lot like the other item where the new controls in the Goldendale Booster Station need to be programmed. Rukert and Milky is the proprietary programmer for the village. And this is work that needs to be completed in order to progress with construction.
Okay.
Proprietary programmers, so they're the only ones that can program anytime we need a change and we have to pay for it every time, right?
Yeah.
Hate that.
Yeah, they've, they get their systems in place and you're,
Okay, still need a motion.
I'll move approval of the quote from Rupert and Milky in the amount of $25,750 for the Golden Dale Booster Station SCADA programming and system integration.
Second.
Quick comment and question following up on Phil. So when we're tied in with a certain firm like this, does that go on forever, or how do you ultimately decide you want to make a change and open it up to bids or whatever? Because there are other big engineering firms, correct?
it's probably when you're doing the type of controller upgrades that we're doing now.
Yeah.
When you do those controllers and you get them in place, they're kind of there for the next 15, 20, 25 years. And, typically you'll want to stick with your programmer during that course of time. But, the one strategy to get out of it would be to, over time, move away from one product and onto another. You might not be in a better situation with the other product, though. It's just kind of a necessary evil.
Do they all have their proprietary, all the firms do, or?
Just some things to fill in the blanks on the word proprietary. From a security perspective, having several firms be involved in the programming of our wells, I think is almost detrimental.
Okay.
Saturday, 8 o'clock, well goes down, I can call the programmer, and because of the history with our community, he knows intimately how his programming affects all the other wells.
That's cool. Yeah.
Right now, you wouldn't have that redundancy with the Rupert and Milky folks.
Yeah, and I wasn't suggesting that we do go down a course of
No.
changing.
Perhaps I was.
I
No.
understand what you're saying. It
Yeah.
makes sense. I understand the bidding process, but especially the security side. I mean, do you
Yeah.
really as a community want several firms to get their fingers in the intimate details of how our utility operates?
Yeah. And if you have somebody with the history, it's easier to troubleshoot, I'm
Oh
sure,
my goodness.
and keep everything online and keep the water running
I
for
can
our
give you hours
residents.
of stories, how
Yeah.
knowledgeable they are.
Yeah, okay, that's good answer. Thank you. So we have a motion, we have a second. Any more discussion, comments? Hearing none, we'll vote. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's unanimous. What an agreeable bunch. K, award of contract to Fourth Infrastructure for design and bid services for well number 2 and number 7 generator replacements for an amount not to exceed $118,000.
So I was talking earlier about opportunities to potentially get proposals and kind of grow our bench of consulting firms. This was one that I was originally eyeballing, but there have been a lot of developments with this, and Foth had actually kind of gone down a road of doing a whole bunch of research for us, and had actually planned to do this as a maintenance project, but because of the dollar threshold, the dollar level that we're expecting with this project, it had to be publicly bid. So we decided that we would lose too much if we went with somebody else, and requested the proposals from Foth to do these generator projects. They are necessary projects. You'll see in the write-up that there were pretty substantial repair estimates for the existing generators, and they're very old generators. They're 28 and 30 years old. So it's, I think, right at the service life that you'd want, and it's about the time that we think about replacing them. And before, spending, approximately $50,000 or a little more actually on repair, this is money well spent on replacement. And we'd like Foth to continue with the project, finish the design and prepare the bid documents and do the bid for us. And that's what we're asking for here.
Right, Tom?
I hear what you're saying, Matt. And also what Paul's saying. But do we do an internal estimate on the cost of these items so we can kind of at least gut check these proposals coming from proprietary sources?
Well, these aren't necessarily, like the generators themselves aren't necessarily proprietary. We do have, you know,
Well,
we certainly don't want a range of generators in order to maintain. It makes sense to have some standard.
proprietary is the wrong word, sole source.
For both or for,
Both, like for this particular project, both, they're saying in an amount not to exceed $118,000. Internally, how do we gut check that?
yeah, well, one of the things that we're starting to do is ask for a detailed scope of work and also have hours associated with tasks, so that we can at least compare those to hourly rates that we've agreed to and make sure that those line up. But I think ultimately, you know, the real way to ensure the best pricing is to create some competition where it makes sense. And that's what we've been talking
Right,
about a little bit
right.
tonight.
Okay. Thanks.
We have a motion? That's suggesting that maybe we should use one.
I'll make a motion to award the contract to both Infrastructure for Design and Bid Services for well number 2 and number 7 generator replacements for an amount not to exceed $118,000.
I'll second.
Further discussion?
So Matt, this is just for the design, right? And it looks like we're,
Design and bid.
oh, design and build.
Bid.
Oh,
Design and
bid, I'm sorry, bid. Yeah, because I think it said one of the houses are, yeah. Well 2 has a deteriorating outbuilding, is that right? Generator's housed in an outbuilding whose exterior and floor are deteriorating.
Yeah, so in a.
So is that gonna be in part of the bid plan?
Yeah, so it's not strictly generators. There's other improvements that will happen with the project. The generators are like by far and away the biggest cost associated with the project.
Further discussion? We'll vote. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's unanimous. Okay, consideration of blanket PO for new water meters, ongoing replacement, cell heads, purchase of commercial water meters. Is this our usual every year?
This is one of the usual ones. Paul brought most of these a couple months ago, but this is just one that we wanted to kind of complete the package of these blanket POs that we do. And it's for meters and the like.
Committee?
I'll make a motion to have a blanket PO for to Merton Farner from Boulder, Colorado, in the amount not to exceed $30,000.
Second.
This is an annual thing, correct? This is just going to cover us for a year?
Yeah, and the $30,000 may or may not all be necessary. This is again, just as needed, we would use these funds.
Okay.
A bigger blanket than you think you need.
Right.
Any further comments? We'll vote. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's unanimous. Thank you, Paul. Award contract for the 2024 seal coating program to Farner Asphalt Sealers of Wanakee, Wisconsin, in the amount of $249,470.40.
So this was a bid that we conducted ourselves. We have budgeted $250,000. There was the one bid. Unfortunately, that's been typical of the last handful of years. But we were able to accomplish the scope that we wanted to with the funds, so we're still confident that it's a good number. But we did have just the one bidder. That could be due to a number of different things, but it could be our product mix, it could be availability. It's hard to say necessarily. So we're looking for approval. This does include a number of different approaches to seal coating, including the GSB 88, including microseal, including microsurface, sorry, and chip seal.
Matt, do other communities have trouble getting more than one bid?
That's a good question. I don't have the answer to that.
Okay, and what about last year? Did we only have one bid?
One bid last year.
Same people, Farner?
Farner,
Okay.
Yep.
And we know that that bid is in the sweet spot, hopefully,
Yep.
from what this should be costing. Okay.
Yeah, and we don't typically run over on that. The quantities are pretty precise, so we're not anticipating to have to do a change order for additional services, so we feel comfortable awarding kind of right up to our budget number.
Just two other comments. I'd be curious maybe in the future to see why we can't get more than one bid and see what's happening in surrounding communities maybe for next year. And then the second thing is we have we have the list of what's going to be seal coated. The roads that are going to be seeing some change. And that is on our website, correct, for people to find?
It is, yep.
Okay, and you'll be communicated with those people before we start doing things in the neighborhood?
Yeah, once we have approved contracts for seal coating and for the road program, we'll be sending out
Awesome.
letters communicating with folks.
Okay.
We'll be conducting, social media communication. I have this spring informational meeting tomorrow where we'll be talking about both of them. So we're making our best attempt to communicate more with
Awesome.
everybody.
Mitty?
Question for Scott. How many years have we used Farner? Quite a bit, right? Quite a bit, the years that we've used Farner.
Yeah, just off the top of my head, there are 3 big ones. Got construction and farm. Yeah, I would say that by and large, Farner has gotten the majority of our work. And when we were getting multiple bids, they were still awarded from time to time as well. So they were always competitive.
So this, I've heard about GSB
88?
88. That's not proprietary to Farner, is it?
No, I don't think so.
Are you happy with that product? I mean, can you really look at a road a couple years down the line and say, because we did
GSB 88.
88, we've extended the life 5 years, so it was worth the money that we spent?
I'll jump in there a little bit, and this is something that I'm going to talk about tomorrow too, if there's folks here to listen.
I will be.
And that, GSB 88 isn't intended to be like a surface layer on the road that makes the road pretty. It's intended to get the oils down into the asphalt and restore it. So it might look a little more impressive, like when you first apply it, but it will fade over time. And that's just because the oils are penetrating. It's not, it's not because it's not performing as expected, but that is something that folks see and I guess question. So it's something that I want to talk about and make sure, we're doing our best to communicate that.
I just want to make sure we're spending money that saves us money, basically on the road projects. Who decides, I'm sure that I know the answer to this, but who decides if it's a GSB 88 or a flex patch or a chip seal? Who's just making those decisions? Is it internal or is Farner weighing in on this too?
No, that's internal. It's something like this year, I think for maybe the first time in a while, we had a group meeting between Scott, myself, Kevin and Jake from engineering and kind of sorted through the different roads based on condition, which application made the most sense.
And the Cadillac is, I'm just looking at unit prices here. Looks like the flex patch, huh?
Well, flex patch is just a patching material, and that's usually used like in tandem with the microsurface to address like bigger separation.
Okay, thank you.
Entertain motion.
I'll make a motion to award the 2024 seal coating program to Farner Asphalt Sealers in the amount not to exceed $249,470.40.
Second,
More discussion?
just a quick one. So roughly the time frame of this?
Well, we don't have a schedule yet. Once we get the contract signed, we'll do a pre-construction meeting, but generally it's going to be right over the summer.
Okay, is that like a couple of months of work? Different area roughly?
I Don't know if it's that long. These are usually, you can move through areas pretty quickly with
Right.
this stuff.
Okay,
It's, certainly a lot faster than the road program.
yes. Okay, thank you.
Just a clarification, staff recommendation was 249,898.85, which is what, about $400 more than the bids that we received? Is that a typo, or is the number that has just been proposed okay?
No, I think that's accurate, but, we'll be able to identify the funding from a road program or another budget just to cover that small amount.
Okay.
Okay, we have a motion, we have a second. Any more questions, comments? A vote, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's unanimous. Moving on to award contract for Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources, Wisconsin Pollution Discharge Elimination System, Permit Education Outreach Services to Southeastern Wisconsin Watersheds Trust in the amount of $18,000.
That's a mouthful.
Wow.
You
Okay.
said it all.
This comes up all the time too, doesn't it?
This
Will we
is-
have to chip in for this or?
This is an annual thing and it's part of our permit requirement. We took a little bit closer look at it this year because the number did jump up on us quite a
It
bit.
sure did.
Um,
Yeah, I thought so too.
So we're kind of near the end of our 5-year permit cycle for the MS4 and we'll be applying again. I think that's a good time to take a look and see if there's another consultant or another way to do this that at least creates a little competition. But this Sweetwater organization does have a little bit of a niche in it, and they're not all professional engineers, so they don't have the big hourly rates that would go along with another consultant. And they do this for numerous other communities throughout Southeast Wisconsin.
No, I remember when this first came up years ago and every year, we stayed at around $5,000 or $6,000 for a while. It was a lot lower, but it is something we have to participate in. Sweetwater is more or less they hire a PR firm that does this. That's why it's so cheap, or cheaper, and everybody has to chip in. So my guess is that this probably is the best deal you're gonna get. Because it's shared cost
I
and
think it's
not
likely, even though
engineers.
even though it more than doubled, I
Yeah.
think it's likely if we looked around next year, and we'll make some effort at that. But I think we'll find that, this is probably still the cheapest way to go about it.
How are they educating and reaching out?
A lot of it is social media. There are some actual like in-person classes. But it's just a series of different communications.
They used to have TV commercials. They used to have a dog, hand puppet. Oh, they did. And I can't remember his name, but he was telling people not to let fertilizer and that go into the,
Yeah.
yeah,
That's what I was thinking.
no. But they had actual TV commercials and things. I haven't seen that in a few years. That was pre-COVID, I think. But anyway, they do things.
Yeah, I mean,
You have an option of doing it yourself, I think, as long as it gets done.
well, sure. I mean, we could do this ourselves but
Yeah.
that would take so much
I'll
time.
pick
It would
another
be-
staff member.
Yeah.
It'd be cheaper doing it this way.
Yep.
Anyway, I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to award the contract for the WDNR, WDPES Permit Education and Outreach Services to Southeastern Wisconsin Watersheds Trust in the amount of $18,000.
Second.
Further discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
It's unanimous. Oh, Wisconsin Department of Transportation State Municipal Financial Agreement for Sidewalk and State Highway 145 Fond du Lac Avenue in the amount of $51,000.
So we're going through some initial coordination meetings with the Department of Transportation regarding this project. And there is an exhibit in the packet that shows kind of the limits of what we're talking about here, basically Fond du Lac from Park Avenue to Main Street, where they've proposed adding sidewalk. A portion of that sidewalk, a small portion of that would be 100% covered by the DOT. And then the larger portion of that, they're looking for a 50-50 village contribution. I think, I'm kind of torn on this and it's something that we can talk about. Ultimately, I think we're looking for approval for this future commitment because the project itself won't happen for a number of years. But if we go down this road, it will obligate the village to that contribution. But one thing I think we need to consider is our approach in general to sidewalks in the village and how we maintain those. Because if we continue to be responsible for, additional sidewalk, and, the item here talks about plans that the village has for different pathways and corridors and improving this type of transportation, walking or biking or whatever. I think we're only going to see more and more sidewalks come up, and we can't have all those become our responsibility for maintenance. So this is a number of years down the road. I think it probably makes sense to go ahead and approve this and continue on that path. But I think for your consideration in the future here, I'd like to bring an item up and discuss sidewalk maintenance in general for the village.
Man, I'm picturing this now. So this is not a big stretch of Fond du Lac Ave, no? Really? Am I correct?
It's from,
You said from Park
it's
to,
from Ivies to Park.
yeah, that's not very big. And they're saying it's our cost would be 51,000 at this point? Current estimate for the sidewalk is 51,000. And if that can be done for 3 years, don't you think that's gonna be more like 71,000 or 81,000? How does that work?
It's possible. I mean, we'd have to look at whatever the eventual funding agreement.
So we're gonna
is.
pay whatever it costs, is what they're asking us to do, really?
What it's really asking is, yeah, we're gonna pay 50% of the cost of this portion of the sidewalk. And then, however the bids may fall is kind of what we'll be on the hook for. For our purposes, we just need to know right now that it's a future commitment
Mhm.
and keep on the radar that for 2028, that's money that we're either gonna have to program out of the
Okay.
road program or separately.
It's 1,800 feet of sidewalk, Terry.
Yeah.
Why are we committing to it so far in advance?
The DNR just works quite a bit in
Strange
advance.
ways. Jeez. So does that I mean, prices are gonna go up in that timeline, so, but we're locked into this? Is that one of the advantages?
What it's gonna cost.
We're locked into the cost share agreement. Yeah.
One last question. So you talked about maintenance. Yeah, that's huge. Maintaining snow plowing it, things like
Exactly.
that.
And, currently with the village, we're required to maintain all the sidewalks with.
Even,
works.
even though it's not a cost share portion? Because it says here for 100, it's not a lot, 185 feet sidewalk by WISDOT. Pretty sure they're not taking ownership of that sidewalk.
Oh, we would have to maintain that as
Still
well.
maintaining that too.
Yeah, the state isn't going to maintain it, and Kevin and I even talked on a call with the DOT about, well, it's a county road, the county could maintain it. No, the county will not maintain it either. So this type of stuff falls to the local community.
Okay.
Ultimately, we have the choice to, and for full transparency, we have the choice to say no, in which case we won't have any future obligation, but they won't build the sidewalk.
Is this a corridor identified in our plans as
It
far
is.
as continuity and all that good stuff?
And we
And
we
it's-
included the plan in the packet. So it is one of those areas where we've talked about increased connectivity.
And it's a
It does
sidewalk,
get people to the park, and there are apartment buildings around there.
but there's different ways of continuity, Jeff, with his planning. So this is on our plan as a sidewalk. Okay.
Yep. And yeah, with the park and the school nearby, I think it
Yeah.
makes
Good idea.
sense.
I agree.
But it is something I think, bigger picture as a village, we need to, think about how we're approaching
Yeah.
sidewalks.
I agree.
Maintenance especially.
Put her on the agenda whenever you think it's time. Do we have a motion?
I'll move approval of the agreement with WISDOT on this project 2475-13-70.
Second that.
Yeah, I got two comments. Number one, being a kid just a few years ago at Kennedy Middle School, I walked that many times, and there is a pinch point. There's a very dangerous spot between the two Gales buildings where there is nothing. There's not even a curb. There's nothing. And that's a dangerous spot. And I think that this continuity is going to be a good change for that area. Especially, another thing that happens is after the parade on the 4th of July, people walk up that way to get to the park. And it's very tight. Now, a lot of times they keep the road closed so that they can get there safely. The other thing that is kind of an ancillary thing, but this was discussed by WisDOT many years ago to abandon Highway 145. And them making this commitment means it's going to stay a state road for a while.
I think so. And, you know, in addition to this project, there's another state project just a little further up 145 at the intersection with Division Road, where there's a traffic circle being considered.
Yeah.
So.
Which is a good thing.
So Rick, in this pinch point area,
Mhm.
is there room to fit a sidewalk?
No,
Okay,
there isn't. I mean, they're going to have to take quite a bit of rock out.
worry about that later, I guess.
Well, it's a state project, right? So all we have to do is pay half of it. Okay, so we have a motion, we have a second. Any other discussion? Vote, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's unanimous. Informational item, annual report for Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources for municipal separated storm sewer system.
So this is an annual report that needs to be submitted by March 31st for this year as part of our MS4 permit. And this is really just an informational item that the report was submitted and was submitted on time. We are expecting, based on some conversations with the DNR, that we'll have some follow-up actions as it relates to different programs that the village has been required to have. These are like operation and maintenance type of programs where you're logging certain activities and reporting on them, that over time, the village has been slow to implement to the point where we've actually recently just received a notice of non-compliance on the issue. So we think that the application is done, but there's quite a bit of work ahead of us in terms of getting those programs up to a satisfactory level with the DNR. That's something that I wanted to be transparent about, but something that has been under-addressed, I guess, by the village historically.
They fine you on certain things, don't they? Didn't we get some fines for like the salt? from the
Yeah,
Truck washing, going into ditches and,
They can do that, and I think I hate to think about like worst case scenarios, but we get all kinds of permits from the DNR, right? And eventually they could say, well, no more permits until you're in full compliance. Now, Kevin and I are new and we can play our new guy card a couple more times, I think. But it is something that we'll have to continue to do due diligence on in order to stay in their good graces. I think we're given a little bit of leeway because of that situation, but it will be something that we need to make progress on.
okay.
when's this card expire?
Is what?
The new guy card, when does that expire?
Till they call you on
Somebody
it.
has to tell me to stop saying that.
1 year upon taking the job.
I did have a question. They talk about separated storm sewer system. Now, are we talking cross connections between sanitary systems and storm? Is that what this is about?
This is about storm.
They say separated storm. So in my mind, the old I&I days, I think about cross connections and, which I'm sure we don't have any in this village.
Getting better.
We did not find any with our illicit discharge detection. So that's good.
Yeah.
So we will be reevaluating the priorities for our sampling in the next 5-year permit cycle.
So is that what this report's about? Just, I mean, once you don't have cross connections or anything, you're not going to have them in the future. So I don't understand what this
This is just
report.
you're required to report on a number of different categories as part of the permit annually. It's a 5-year permit with an annual reporting requirement.
Okay. Thank you.
So the sanitary cross connections are part of that illicit discharge sampling program. Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Is this connected in any way? I know Menominee Falls this year, I think, is instituting a stormwater management program where people are getting taxed on impervious surface, both commercial buildings and residential. And Menominee Falls is just starting that this year.
Well, I think.
It's basically a stormwater utility tax.
I think, that is something the village will probably have to consider down the road because we have aging stormwater infrastructure that's going to need to be addressed. And in order to do that properly, there's probably going to have to be some sort of stormwater utility created to do that.
Kind of like a user fee.
Yeah. I just was curious the way Menominee Falls puts this in their annual report as a very positive thing. And it is positive, except it costs a lot of money for residents.
Yeah, but it takes, where do you want to pay for it, in your taxes or?
Yeah, when you have to do it, right. Okay. Anyway, thank you for the report on that. This moves on to finally the April Director's Report.
All right, I'll try to be concise with this since we're a couple hours into the meeting. And if there's any questions about something I don't address, feel free to ask. The main thing I wanted to highlight on the first page of the report was the well 12 construction, and I already talked about that during the item. But that's just a new development that I want everybody to be aware of. Moving on to the second page, the main thing on the second page that I wanted to talk about was another WSDOT project that's coming up for this year, actually, summer of 2024, for improvements to the Lannon and Maple intersection. This is a project that has originally a 90-10 federal and then local split. So back when when the project was first conceived, it was like roughly an 88 or 880 or so $1,000 project. And with the 90-10 split, we're estimating that we'd have about a $90,000 share. That agreement was updated last year, and then a cap on the federal contribution was also put in place. And the project estimate is now quite a bit above where it was originally. So with that, with the cap in place, and then with the result of the bids, the village is on the hook for a much larger percentage of the project, to the tune of about $500,000.
From 90,000 from 10% of whatever to
Yeah,
to
what
half a
was
million
originally
dollars?
88, what was originally 88,000 is, so 569,000, roughly $570,000.
How can they justify that? And how can they expect, I mean, do we have to say yes to this then?
Yeah, the bid is awarded and we agreed to it. So that's the
We agreed to
difficult.
the bid, but that's when the percentage was different.
But we also agreed to this cap in the federal contribution. So
This sounds like Ponzi scheme.
it was a series of unfortunate events. But when I got the notice of the bid award, I went back and did some research and found, how this has kind of progressed over time, and the scope probably grew. But then, the cap on the federal spending is in place in this last agreement that was done in, I think, July of 2023. And then, kind of opposite of what we've seen on other projects where we're getting good pricing on construction recently. This one is still a little bit high and higher than the estimate. So we're that much more above.
How do we pay that? Is that in our budget?
I think that's an item that we're looking at additional borrowing for. And I think Steve and Matthew are bringing that to the GGF
And
committee.
this is a state project, correct? Who started it?
It's managed by WSDOT.
Okay, it's managed by WSDOT, because sometimes they let you have a payment plan. I know we did that on some former project, I recall, where we were able to pay it over 3 years or something, which made it more palatable. But I'm shocked that that intersection, for what it is, costs that much money. If we had done it ourselves, it'd be half that. That's typical working with your intergovernmental stuff.
Yeah, so the latest estimate was 1.1 million and the bid came in at 1.3.
Okay.
And 45%.
That's crazy.
So again, just something to be aware of, but also be aware that this is work that's happening this year. So there's
Where
going to
you
be,
play your new guy card.
I had nothing to do with this one. But no, in all seriousness, I think it is
Yeah.
a good opportunity to look at what other agreements we have with WISDOT and make sure that we're planning appropriately budget-wise for future years to make sure that we don't have like this kind of over.
Yeah, I mean, this is very concerning
I'm
on that. And I
very-
know the ball is rolling. I mean, they're going to start, within the next few weeks, I'm thinking.
We just tell them that we don't have the budget for it. And it's gonna have to be a payment. I tell Steve that, because he wasn't here when we would call that happening. At least a couple of us were here. And you can get those payments structured if you really tell them, look, it's not in the budget.
That was more recent. That was,
It was Don's Bay part of.
I remember that too.
Fees or something.
Yeah.
They were astronomical.
Yeah, I would have to reach out to WISDOT and inquire about that approach for. pay.
Yeah, I mean,
What program did that come under for WISDOT? Is it a safety hazard improvement?
Yeah, I mean, it was all, I forget the name of the grant program. I might have it here.
Grant, call that a grant?
some grand.
Grantless.
isn't there county highway funds or something like that? Other funding? I know Steve always looks for funding, so I'm not,
There might be
I'm sure
something
he's-
with The county, because the county's pretty.
Yeah,
looking
the financial
everywhere.
agreement doesn't say like the name of the grant program. But it was because safety was kind of the.
Yep, it was identified as one of the bad intersections.
High
in the-
crash rate.
It is a bad one.
It has really
drove it
bad
tonight.
crash
That was
data.
Yeah.
really bad.
It's a very awkward intersection. We do get a lot of consumer
But-
complaints on that.
My God.
But yeah, maybe we can look into that, or whenever that
I
comes up
think
again, you can
it's
mention it to
we
Steve.
expected.
But
Boy, that's bad publicity.
any other news that you want to point out before we close out?
We're still working on vacancies in the engineering department. Just recently, Kevin and I talked with Aaron about different ways that we can do some recruiting, but we've had a real hard time finding anybody to apply for, much less fill those positions. So we're going to continue efforts and probably take some new approaches there.
Do you hire trustees?
Submit that application.
How about number 6, Matt? New policy, service request and complaint handling. That sounds interesting.
Yeah, so this is just my first attempt at putting a few policies in place to kind of put some structure on how we deal with things in the department. I was hoping at the time I wrote this that it would be done, but I think this just needs a little more shopping around in the department. But sometime in the next couple of weeks, we're going to have kind of a system in place to handle complaints and standards for when and how we respond to people, and then how we document what was decided ultimately out of those.
I like that.
communications.
And if you could maybe just comment for anybody watching on the Public Works Spring Information Meeting, the time, where it's at, and what you plan on just basically uncovering.
Yeah, so the spring informational meeting is taking place tomorrow at 6 PM right here in the boardroom. We're basically going to talk about all of the construction projects that are happening in the village in 2024. In addition, we'll talk about some DPW operational things like hydrant flushing, like street sweeping, like tree planting and pruning, and things like that.
And people can ask questions at this as well.
Yeah, so it'll be a presentation
Mhm.
that Kevin and I will do, and then we'll allow opportunities for questions and answers at the end. I think it's a first attempt. It came together kind of quick, but I thought it was something that was worth trying. And we'll kind of see how it goes and fine tune it for future years.
I think it's a great idea. And, see, this is April, and even if you don't get a great turnout, to be able to maybe do it again just prior, even if it's a repeat performance, prior to the construction season, when we're going to be going out and doing all the roads. I think it's a great idea.
Yeah, it can't hurt.
No,
I
can't
put it
hurt.
That way, and it'll be recorded, so it'll be available online for people as well.
Oh, good.
Uh,
Okay, perfect.
Matt, one
Questions on pickup for debris and shrubs. That had come up in the past.
Yeah, debris pickup and
Debris
general
pickup.
garbage pickup and process to do that.
Yep, that's all.
Is Deb still getting calls on that rather than waste management?
Sure, yeah, when you look at the complaint.
Yeah, I saw there was a couple on here.
Yeah, we get a lot of calls for like waste management services and also calls inquiring about work from other agencies, like We Energies in particular
Does-
right now.
Does Deb just say, call this number, or does she actually take care of it at that point?
Well, it's different depending on who calls. If it's waste management, that is our contract. So then she'll take the information
Okay.
and coordinate it for the citizen. When it's another agency, then we just have to refer them to the best information that we have available. We're working with We Energies on trying to identify, like, more specifically what projects they're doing and when, and having points of contact. And I've had a little bit of success recently with the point of contact at We Energies committing to providing some of that data. And then we can, put that on our website and put it out on social media and try to at least get people pointed in the right direction after one call instead of maybe a series of calls that they'd have to go through ordinarily.
Yeah, my point on the waste management was I did have a miss picked up and I did call, I went on the village website and it said, call this number, and I called and got them, and 2 days later they picked up my garbage that they missed. And
Yeah.
so it does work. And I would think that she doesn't have to field those calls and say, call this number. But I understand it's our contract.
Yeah. Yeah. So
President.
typically with waste management, we'll handle that. We'll take the information from the citizen and turn it over to We Energies.
Some residents get
Waste management.
kind of upset that, once they call the village for a waste management issue, they don't understand the contract, how it's set up, and they've said that they were just told to call waste management by your department, and they were a little miffed by that.
That may have been the case in the past, but I kind of made a point when I started to say, well, this is our contract, and ultimately it's the performance of somebody we've hired.
Yep.
So I'd like to know the type of information that we're taking calls on. So if it ever comes to it down the road, we need to, sit down with waste management and talk about a series of issues. We've got some data to back that up.
That's good to hear. That's how I'd like to hear it being handled.
Okay, well, thank you for the update. I really, it's very comprehensive and I appreciate it, and I'm sure we all do. Let's move on to our next meeting date. The first Wednesday of the month will be Wednesday, the 1st. Does that work for everyone? Yes, 5:30 in this room. That works
Yep.
for Deb and everyone.
It does.
So that's what we will do. And then hopefully no more announcements. I think we've been talking long enough tonight. And we'll adjourn the meeting at 7:53 PM. Thank you, everyone. Yeah, that's more of a chamber thing.
Yeah, it's posted on the website and we've on social media. Some other things as part of, I think it's on, there's a slide on 5. I have to look myself, I think.
Yeah.
Not in the main, like, public meeting, because it's not a public meeting, but.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that, I'm just stunned by it. Whatever. There should be. That, I think I'm not gonna let this go. That's a good point, because we're not prepared for that. We don't have that money. Yeah, don't talk to your boss and talk to Steve, because I'm on that side. There should be an out clause. I want out. We can fix that up.
Yeah. Yeah, I know, I think there is like a way, because I know it's got some.
They do, but they
This year, the dairy company that hosts the website to do some upgrades.
I would love to. Me and the church.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and, you know,
They're involved in it.
oh. Yeah, and with the information, I think that was, just say, I kind of picked the date. I guess I didn't realize, you know, I don't know if it was last day, there might be with that meeting.
Yeah, we, some, I think the southeast.
So we'll figure it out. But you recording, I learned how to do it today, so I absolutely got those. I don't avoid those kind of.
So resource
Yeah.
and provider schedule is in, I think in terms of. But not work schedule. The work schedule is maintained in separate programs. So Epic doesn't do anything with payroll.
8 o'clock.
Nobody other did.
That today.
All separate.
Nice driver.
Oh, so you didn't delve into that portion of it?
It's. That's
Right.
It'll be a.
And Workday is another Epic like.
Well, even if we have.
All of our
Pure
HR
still would be a debate.
and
Yeah,
rooms
I mean, it would be.
and facilities and firms and internet.
Workers.
Yeah, that would have been nice, and now Adam kind of realized. that.
Same
Great.
thing.
Yeah.
Same.
Just.
Large organization.
Yeah, I think expectations.
Right.
Yeah, we are.
Well, before the meeting, I called Terry and I said, you know.
Have a good night.
Just said, what do you think the bulls will
See you Monday, if not before.
Are you going to the thing tomorrow night?
Yeah, I'm presenting.
Oh, good.
No, good.
What's the attire?
I'll probably wear a suit. I usually don't.
The Chamber of Commerce with them?
Yeah. Honestly, I don't, but since I'm presenting for Dean.
What dean's going to be there?
No.
So is that by invite only? You have to have a ticket to get in.
Or if you could. Hope you'll let it tomorrow and see.
See you perform.
The village had a table.
$1 million.
Village has a table?
Which does have.
We have a table, yeah.
See what Aaron has to say. She's one.
Not up. I didn't realize that was.
Yeah, I bought my ticket and then Aaron goes, you're presenting. so you can get-"
The price you pay.
But yeah, good deal or not.
Yeah, right, no.
Yeah, we know if there's a vacancy, I'll pop it.
Cut me off the cuff.
Yeah, well, I've seen you off the cuff, but in different venues.
That's true.
What time does that start?
Cocktails are 5. Yeah, it's 5
I
o'clock.
think it's 6, right?
It is.
Oh, bummer.
I know.
I go to this one.
The informational meeting? Well, and I'll have an audience of one then.
At least one will show up.
You know, get more routine and regular.
Yeah.
Work spent.